Mary's rifle, Maryland's lipstick, Benny Goodman's corset and pin. Went searching through thrift-store jungles. Geronimo's rifle, Maryland's lipstick, and Benny Goodman's corset and pin. Okay, I made this up. I promised you I'd never give up. If it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. If it makes you happy, why the hell are you so sad? Get down, real low down. You listen to Coltrane, derail your own train. Who hasn't been there before? I come around. Serve you French toast again. Well, okay, I still get stoned. Well, I'm not the kind of girl you take home. If it makes you happy, it can't be that bad. If it makes you so sad. If it makes you happy, you can't be that bad. If it makes you happy, then why the hell are you so sad?
Welcome to Musicians. I'm David Wild, and more importantly, this is Sheryl Crow. Let's skip momentarily the very important issue of why the hell you're so sad, and move directly to why aren't you the kind of girl we'd take home?
God, there's a list probably of, no, that's not true. I think I'm a perfect girl to take home. In fact, I think I'm the marrying kind. I think that's why I don't get taken home.
Result, no, that's result.
My work ethic, maybe, David. I think it's my work ethic.
Your Protestant work ethic?
My
or
Puritan Protestant work
your
ethic.
Your Kennett work ethic?
Yeah.
I want to go back to how I met you. I don't know if you would remember this, but I actually met you, I think, at a very pivotal make-or-break moment in your career. I was asked by your label to come down and hear this new artist they had, and you played me a bunch of tracks from what was supposed to be your first record.
Oh, that's right.
And I told you it was great. The next day you went into the company and said, please don't release my record, and scrap the whole thing, which was, I took it as a sign of respect from my point of view.
If David Wild thinks it's great, then scrap it.
What really happened that moment? What was, I do remember looking at you and thinking you didn't seem entirely comfortable with who was on this record, and maybe because it wasn't entirely you.
Well, for those of you that don't know the story, I spent like $450,000 making my first record. I it just didn't feel right in my spirit. And luckily, A&M was the kind of label, always was the kind of label that was real artist-oriented and really tuned into how an artist needs to develop. And so they gave me another shot. But it was about 2 years before I got to go in and make another record. So.
And did they pay for that first mistake?
Well, basically what happened was they didn't put the record out, and then for about a year and a half, I was nowhere. And I changed managers, and it was just a long process. And when the 2 Cent Music Club record came out, luckily it did well enough that that record was just absorbed into all that. But yeah, somebody had to pay for it.
Take me back to the moment and explain to me where you were physically and psychologically when you wrote If It Makes You Happy.
Well, that record, that was a really fun record to make. That was on the Sheryl Crow record, the Sheryl Crow record. And that whole album was really a reaction to what had happened to me after the success of the 2 Cent Music Club. There were a lot of naysayers and a lot of people saying, oh, she had all these men around her and all these Svengalis, and it was like the true Pygmalion story. And did she do any of it? Was she even there? And just all this kind of crazy speculation after the album busted wide open and won Grammys and stuff. So I went to New Orleans to get away from everything and to make my second record, and got down there with my producer who had produced the 2 Cent Music Club. And he stayed like 24 hours and then split. I mean, just like, I gotta go. And I called my manager and said, what do I do? I don't, I don't have a producer. I'm down here in New Orleans. I'm by myself. And he's like, you just make your record. You sit down and you record your songs like you did your demos, and just make it. And then if it sucks, then we'll get somebody else. We'll bring somebody else in, but at least try it. And so I found this wonderful producer and, engineer that had worked there, Trina, who's been with me ever since. And we just took it on. And that song was really kind of a reaction to just everything that had culminated in that point of being frustrated and having everybody around me being kind of a negative force. And it was just like a bust-out song of, hey, life is okay. You have to like not get into, like not nitpick every single thing and try to get into the joy of the moment. I mean, now we're certainly, that's probably a really good piece of advice, just to like enjoy the tiny things in life, So.
Can you show us a little bit how it happened for you musically?
Well, I'll tell you how it happened. I have this wonderful co-writer down there. This is when I got down there and Bill left, and I was down there by myself. I got Trina, and then I called my friend Jeff Trott. And Jeff, I hope he doesn't mind me telling this, but Jeff was in a great band called Wire Train, and was kind of around some on the 2 Cent Music Club record. And he had just joined the Wallflowers, and it was rehearsing. And I called him and said, will you come down and just help me on my record? And he saw an opportunity to write, and so about 3 days before the Wallflowers were going on the road, he quit. And so it's like, okay, he got songs on my record, but he could have been in the Wallflowers. But and he was the one that came up with this guitar. And most of our songs have gotten written that way. He came up with oh, wait a second. A lot of Stonesy stuff because he knows what I'm into, and I'll take a guitar riff and then write around that. And it's always fun that way. I can write a lot of sensitive, heartfelt stuff, but if I want to rock, sometimes I rely on him to bring in a guitar riff. So. And
lyrically, what were you?
Well, I know you were totally hip to what went on with me in the press and stuff, and there were a couple really not. There were just some low points in the success of the 2 Cent Music Club record, and that record was for me a real blessing. And I still have really great, have really fond memories of it. And but I kind of took a beating there, and so I think just the whole thing was really inspired by feeling kicked around a little bit discouraged, and it was kind of really just a letter to myself.
And what did it feel like? That song, that record was a record where you really had to prove that the naysayers were wrong, that you were your own creation. and that song really was the one that did it. Was there a sense of, I don't know if it's revenge or just accomplishment?
No, I don't know. You know, so I think something happens in I don't think your spirit innately grasps to darkness. It doesn't, I don't think it gravitates to revenge. I think you let it go there. And for me, getting the record done was just a joyous experience. When I listened to it, I felt like every single emotion that I had had when I went in to make the record was all completely indexed on that record. It was all captured, and it was the best record I could make at that time. And I enjoyed the process, and then when it had success and people were, I think, maybe some people were relieved, but a lot of people were surprised that I was talented. I didn't feel that, like, you know, F you, you know, I didn't really feel that. I just felt happy to have the career that I have, you know.
Sheryl, you're a perfect guest for a show called Musicians, because I think you've had more jobs involving music than anyone else I know. Can you run through, as far as you can remember, every job you've had that involved music?
Well, I was a stripper. And then, no, I'm kidding, I wasn't. I was a school teacher. I taught in St. Louis. I taught elementary music, and I was a backup singer for Michael Jackson and Don Henley and a lot of other people. My first big break, I sang a McDonald's commercial. It's a good time for the great taste of McDonald's. And what else? I guess that's it. Have I had other odd jobs? I'm a producer.
Well, let's go back to your early bands.
Oh, I was in a cover band, a really bad cover band.
Called?
Cashmere.
Exactly, but not like the Zeppelin song.
No, we weren't quite that cool.
More like the Sweater.
It was more like the Sweater.
Exactly. And trust me.
Thanks for pointing that out,
Yeah,
David.
if you saw the picture of them, you know it was more like the Sweater. I believe
it was, yeah.
Sort of a lover boy thing going on with this.
It was during the Let's Get Physical, and I had that hair. I had that haircut, and I did wear the bandana.
And so you confirm she was a big influence, Olivia Newton-John.
I would say Quarter Flash was more of a...
Exactly. You'd like to do a little Hard in My Heart, or you're not
I want to harden my heart. No, we did it all. We did Pat Benatar. We did Heart. Oh, Pat Benatar. Yeah. And oh yeah, all that stuff.
Tell me your very, very first musical memory.
Well, my earliest music memories were because I grew up with parents who were in a swing band, an amateur swing band, and they would play on the weekends. My earliest memories were of the Magnavox, and we had one of those huge consoles with the grill, of being up at night and them all coming home, smoking and drinking. They were wild, and playing big band music and dancing, and like real dancing, like, you know, partner dancing, and playing and jamming until like the wee hours of the morning. And that's, you know, what I thought as a kid, every kid, I just thought all parents were like that. And then during the week, my mom was the piano teacher, and all four of us kids took piano, and she would stand in the kitchen, and there were 4 pianos in the house. And then she would stand in the kitchen, and she would be able to tell who in what room was not playing their lesson. And it was always me, you know. She'd be like, Kathy, that's an F sharp, and that's a da-da-da. And Karen, you need to be hitting that Bach a little harder. And Sheryl, that's James Taylor. Now come on, and you know. But those are really, you know, the early memories of them making us perform for their friends, and you know.
What's the first time you got paid for it, making music in any way?
Probably doing commercials in St. Louis. I did, like I said, I only did a couple, and I did one for McDonald's that went regional, and then it got picked up nationally. And I was a school teacher at the time, and I was making, I think my first year I made $17,000, and then the next year I made $18,000. And in about an hour's worth of work, I made about 45 grand. And so I packed up the truck and I moved to Beverly.
First, you continued your studies. Tell us where you went to college.
Mm-hmm. I went to college at the University of Missouri, which at the time was rated #2 party school in the nation, right under LSU. And I got my degree in classical piano and voice.
And will you prove... Can you take me back to the trip to Los Angeles that you made? You you know, how big a leap of faith was it, you know, and literally, what do you remember of that trip and making that drive?
Well, it's funny because I was working in St. Louis, and I was doing a big band gig for, I think, maybe a wedding or some kind of banquet. And it was, as soon as the gig was over, I got in my car at 2:30 in the morning, and I told my friends goodbye, and I headed off to LA. And I didn't stop. I drove 27 hours all the way there, and I listened to Pat Metheny and Lyle Mays and just this music that had been a part of that part of my life, and cried. And I mean, it was like this ridiculous cathartic experience, but that only we Lilith women could really understand. But it just was a weird time. But I got into LA at 4:30 on the freeway, just standstill traffic, and that's when I really started crying. I was like, what am I doing? I don't even know anybody here. What do you know? And I got the name of somebody to stay with, actually a friend of my sister's, and it was really funny. I pull up into this house, and there's like 12 people living in this house, and it was just crazy. All these people like doing blow and stuff. And I was from Missouri. I'd never even seen anything like that, you know. And so I just started thinking of LA as like this Babylon. And so you know, it picked up. Things got better.
I think did it pick up when you met a nice, down-to-earth guy named Michael Jackson? Was that the...
Well, that was kind of funny. I did all the wrong things. I took my tapes to all the wrong places, and eventually I started getting a little bit of work as a background singer, and I overheard some singers talking about the Michael Jackson audition for his world tour, and I just had a lot of spunk and tenacity and crashed the audition, and then I got it. I mean, basically it was like I walk in, I sign this sheet of paper, and I stand up in front of this camera, and they're like, okay, tell the camera your name. I'm like, hi, I'm Sheryl Crow. And they're like, well, do you want to say anything to Mike? And I'm like, hi, Mike. God, I'd really like to go on the road with you. And he picked me.
Now, was that the longest conversation you had with Mike?
It was one of the longer conversations, yeah.
What was, talk about the life of the backup vocalists, because, you know, you don't hear about them much. You sort of notice them over there.
They're really the unsung heroes.
What kind of life is that? And what did you learn anything from it? Did you learn how to do any of Michael's, can you do the hee-hees? See,
it's fun. I used to double him on, she says I am the one. But, well, he's great. You know, he's, and at that time he was unbelievable. And I learned a lot, just a lot of life experiences on that tour, because at the time that I got it, I'd only been in LA for 6 months, and I didn't even own a passport, and I'd never been out of the country. And it was a long tour. It was 18 months, and which is a long time to work for anybody. And he didn't really have a relationship with any of us. So, and I've learned one of the invaluable lessons, I think, from that tour is that it really means a lot to your band and to your crew to know them, because they give up their family life to come out and be with you and to support what you do. And so after a while, it was a little demoralizing not having a relationship with, you know, this guy that we were all backing. But, you know, it was still a good experience.
Do you think it's safe to say there are some great musicians and singers in the background that, because of, you know, the sort of career mistakes that you didn't make early on, that we never really know about them?
Well, I always think that there's just like a long line of people behind the one person that gets all the notoriety, you know, whether it's like the hair and makeup and the clothing and all the imaging. It's also all those people that come in and play on your records, because, you know, they are the unsung heroes. They're the people that in the long line of great bands like Derek and the Dominoes, the names that people don't know, they're like the guys that are what's making things funky, you know, and they're invaluable.
Sheryl, tell me about Don Henley as a boss, and also how he encouraged you as a songwriter.
Don's awesome, and in some ways I have to give it up to him for sort of setting my artistic career in motion, because at the time I met him, I'd just come off the road with Michael Jackson, and I'd had a couple of songs on hold to be recorded by some real big artists. One was Phil Collins, one was Eric Clapton, and Don had said, you know, you really need to keep those songs for yourself so that you can get signed and you'll have, you know, and at the time I needed money, and B, I felt like if I could stop waiting tables and get a publishing deal, that would allow me time to, you know, hone my craft or whatever. And But I took his advice, and he helped me in the beginning he helped me get interest from record labels, and he just kind of put his energy where his mouth was. You know, he kind of stood by me, made a lot of phone calls, got a lot of people interested in me, got my songs around, and also being on the road with him, I think, was really, for me, insightful, because he would travel with the band, and I just saw the difference that it made. He always took us out for dinner as like a big family, and he's just more of a hands-on kind of guy, more old style, really into lots of different kinds of music, and got a wicked sense of humor, and just a good guy.
What was your favorite song to do the background vocals for in his set?
I loved the New York Minute.
Can you do the New York Minute background vocals?
In a New York minute. Right. I can do the choreography too. Anyway.
Can we hear an example of the craft that Don encouraged and have you play Home from the Sheryl Crow album?
Yeah, you want it on the piano or on the guitar?
Where would you like it?
I'll do it on the piano because I don't usually do that.
To give your love to just one man, afraid of feeling nothing, bees or butterflies. My head is full of questions, my heart is full of lies, and this is home. This is home. I've met him standing there when I was 17. Now I'm 32 and I can't remember what I'd seen in him. I made a promise and I did it every day. Now I'm reading romance novels and I'm dreaming of yesterday. And this is this is home. I'd like to see the Riviera and slow dance underneath the stars. I'd like to watch the sun come up in a stranger's arms, and this is home, home, and this is home, home. I'm going crazy, little every day, 'cause everything I've wanted is now driving me away. I woke this morning to the sound of breaking hearts. Mine is full of questions and it's tearing yours apart. tearing yours apart. Tearing yours apart. Tearing yours apart. And it's tearing us apart.
Tell me where you were when you wrote that one.
I was at Kingsway and the studio, and I was downstairs, and it was interesting. My boyfriend at the time, who I'd been with actually for a long time, was upstairs and working on a screenplay, and I don't really know what possessed me to write it, but it was one of those unusual songs that happened on the mic. We were working on something totally different, and it wasn't really coming together, and I was playing the bass. And so while they were kind of trying to figure out technically what was going wrong with the other song, I started playing that, and everybody fell in together, and we got it. I mean, she had the Trina had the tape rolling, which is first sign of a great engineer. Always have a tape rolling. And then we tried to record it a few times later, and it just never had the initial spirit. And literally, it was a lot of the lyrics were there, just happened, you know, on the spot. But there were lines that had to be filled in, so we had to rig up all these, you know, monitors just to get the bleed that we had originally. But it was just one of those unusual songs that wrote itself.
The record that really sort of introduced you to everybody, All I Want to Do, did you have any sense of...
Well, that was the one song that we were teetering with not having on the record. It was like, do we put 10 on? Do we put 11 on? This is the weakest song on the record. Do we, you know, and I was really fighting for it to not be on the record. And then in the end, I thought, you know what, it fills a position, and I did believe in the song because it really was a snapshot of what LA was like in the 90s, and it was definitely a snapshot of how I, you know, of my life at that time.
Another song from that record, Leaving Las Vegas, is that one you feel closer to?
Well, Leaving Las Vegas has has its own story, but I really enjoy playing that song, and it was a lot of fun because it was the first song that we actually, that really was the cornerstone of the Tuesday Night Music Club, which was basically a series of jam sessions that we're having on Tuesday nights, and they were pretty fruitful for about four Tuesdays, and then after that, it kind of all fell apart. But that was the first song, and that was really what I think gave me the impetus for creating an album that way.
You know, that record obviously made you successful. Was the dream of success very different from the reality of success for you?
Well, you know, I've said it a million times, there's not a handbook for becoming famous or for becoming successful or whatever. And like I said, I'm a person that I have this overwhelming urge to be right with the world, you know, to make sure everybody's pleased and happy with me. And at which point I was starting to get noticed. I noticed that all the nice things that were being said about me were not being said anymore. You know, I was like the Sandra Bullock of music. You know, when she became so popular, it seemed like everything became an attack, and that kind of happened to me. But that's just the nature of the beast, and it happens to everybody. And I, even in the end, became totally sick of myself. I got tired of seeing myself. I got tired of feeling like if I wasn't in a magazine that perhaps interest was waning. You know, it's just, fame is a weird trip, you know, it's just like this coat of paint, and when it starts cracking, it's like a panic sets in. And now I don't, you know, I didn't set out to be famous, so it was really a mind blower.
I think you once told me, if you want to write a song, you shouldn't even start without buying the Bob Dylan songbook and, you know, learning from a master. What is it about Dylan that you learned a lot from?
I remember reading once something he'd said about the song A Hard Rain, about how he felt like every line in that song could be the beginning of a new song. And that is for me, an epiphany, because if you looked at your songwriting like that, that really dictates that you don't allow any fat into your song. You know, you're not rhyming just for the sake of rhyming. And you know, he's just a great poet, and he is the sort of uncanny knack at being a spectator and a commentator, and but everybody relates to the essence of his songs.
And you had the experience of having him bring you a song. Tell me about what that was like.
He, on my last record, called on my birthday. He called me in the studio, which that never happens. I mean, don't get me wrong, that definitely never happens.
He never calls on my birthday.
Yeah, it was really weird. And Jeff answered the phone in the studio, and he said, Bob Dylan's on the phone. I was like, ha, ha. And I was having a bad birthday. I was turning 36, and was, you know, every birthday is about not having, you know, I'm not pregnant, I'm sad, you know. And but he called me, and he it was really funny. I hope he doesn't mind me telling this, because I think it's just such a sweet story. But he's like, hey, what are you doing? And I said, I'm in the studio. And he was asking what I was working on, and I said, and it's my birthday. And he's like, oh, it's your birthday? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, you don't sound very happy. And I was like, yeah, I want to have a baby. And he's like, well, let's have a baby.
What a sport, you know.
But that was when he said he had this song called Mississippi, and you know, that was just one of those songs that, to me, you could take every line in that song and start a new song with it. That's just like the most economical song, and it's a blast to play, and it's on his new record, and his version is so beautiful, and you know, he's just masterful.
Can you show us even a line or two from it, just so we can?
Yeah, it's funny because when we recorded it, for one thing, you don't get to hear his version of things. His publisher will come in and they'll play you like a demo, and I guess they get people to sing his songs because I guess Bob just didn't want his out on the road, you know what I'm saying? So, but I kind of, when I was recording it, I don't know, I just kind of imagined how he would sing it. Every sort of way we walk the line, your days are numbered, so are mine. Time is piling up, we struggle and we scrape, all boxed in, nowhere to escape. City's just a jungle, more games to play. I'm stuck in the heart of it, trying to get away. I was raised in the country, working in the town. I've been in trouble since I set my suitcase down. Ain't got nothing for you, I had nothing before. Don't have anything for myself anymore. Sky's full of fire and the rain is pouring down. Nothing you could sell me, so I'll see you around. Trials of expression, thoughts so sublime, never do you justice, pleasing a rhyme. 'Cause there's only one thing that I did wrong. I stayed in Mississippi a day too long. Anyway, you get the idea.
Tell me a little bit about making this new record, because it took years, and you know, you were
It took a long time, and it took a few trips to Mount Sinai for some psychiatric help. And I actually am not joking about that. Had Mariah not had the incident that she had, I would have fully checked myself in, but I just didn't want the press, frankly. And I am actually kind of kidding, but I'm actually really not kidding. But it just was I don't know, it was a really difficult album to make.
Tell me about some of the people who helped you with this record, because there are some amazing people.
There's a long dictionary of names.
You went from the White House to Kid Rock's house looking for
Actually,
help.
you know what? I did go visit Kid Rock, and that was really, in a funny way, an important turnaround for me, because when I went in to make the record initially, I'd just been on the road, and I always had people say, wow, you know, you should really make a rock record that, you know, that is as rocking as your band. And so I said, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to go in and make like the all-time Southern rock record, because that's what I, you know, grew up with, Lynyrd Skynyrd. And I got really far away from that. I don't know how I managed to, I just couldn't, like I lost myself. And started hanging out with Kid Rock, who is just so... Anyway. And I went to Detroit actually to work on something of his, which is now on his record, and it was just so much fun. It totally reminded me of what it was like when I was growing up. It was all about trucks and Camaros and Leonard Skinner and the Allman Brothers and Budweiser and hanging out with your friends, and I just felt like, wow, I remember now who I am. And I think you can live in Hollywood and you can have money and be famous, and then you start to forget who your audience is. And my audience were always the people that I, you know, they were my peeps. They were the people that I, you know, they were the people that drank Budweiser and listened to the Allman Brothers, just like I still do. And so it turned me around. It reminded me, you know, of what it was I'm supposed to be doing.
You've had a chance to work with virtually everyone you ever worshipped, it seems like.
I've been really fortunate.
Tell me what it's like to, you know, to work with the Stones, you know, with Clapton, with Stevie Nicks, who I know is an important person in your life. What's it like?
You know what, if I stop and think about it really hard, it blows a couple of fuses in my brain. You know, to have Eric come up and play with me, really, that was really big for me. I mean, really, really, really big for me. And the Rolling Stones, too. I mean, and Stevie, I think those three people were just huge. You know, I wanted to be Stevie Nicks. I totally wanted to be her, and I had my hair like her, and when people told me I looked like her, I just was like floating on air. It's just so major. And Stevie has been such an awesome, awesome friend and influence on my life now. I mean, she's become one of my closest friends, and there's just nobody, I don't know, there's nobody like her. So I just feel really blessed, and I just feel fortunate.
Can you sing us a favorite Stevie song, just a little bit, sort of show?
Well, hey, I can try. My favorite, of course. Let me see, I'd have to do it with a capo because she has such a lower voice. Take my love to the town. Climbed a mountain and I turned around. If you see my reflection in a well, landslide will bring it down. She'll kill me that I don't, you know. See, this is what... That's what happens. I get put on the spot, like, you know, sitting at the piano. I get nervous. I still get nervous, particularly with impromptu stuff.
Sheryl, what has music brought to your life?
What has music brought to my life? Well, God, I don't know if I can actually verbalize that. That's tough. It's so much a part of who I am that I don't know that I could separate that and then still continue to have all the molecules together, because I was so raised with it and was so much a part of my upbringing and the defining of my personality. You know, at every awkward turning point in my life, I've always relied on music, and in all the joyous moments and all the sad moments, it's been, for me, the thing that's kind of gotten me through. And it's, you know, it's like my faith, really. I think it just defines who I am and how I feel and think. So I guess it's just, you know, it's just brought a huge dimension to my life that I can't imagine not having.
And putting all humility aside, what do you think your life has brought to music?
Oh, wow. I guess for me, the only thing I would say is that I hope that there's a sense of reality and honesty in my music, and the people that it seems to reach or seems to touch, I think that's what they relate to, is the common experience. You know, the common language and of life experiences.
Would you now do, I think, my favorite song, or one of the songs I've heard, perhaps my favorite song, and it's definitely a car song from the new record. It's called Soak Up the Sun.
Yeah, I'd love
and
to.
it's like the Beach Boys on better acid. I think that was the line that was running around.
More expensive
And then if we
acid.
get really lucky, maybe you'll do Freebird after that.
Oh, I love it. I do a
exactly.
mean Freebird over a Madonna song.
Great.
Okay, I'll try it. I've never done it, David, so
Well-
you can tell everybody how fantastic it is on the album.
Exactly.
Look at that mic. Okay, you're gonna have to like bring that little. Will you move that over here? I'm having to use my lyric because I've never done it before. And if it's really bad, will you just clap anyway? My friend, the communist, holds meetings in his RV. I can't afford his gas, so I'm stuck here watching TV. I don't have digital, I don't have diddly squad. It's not having what you want, it's having what you've got. I'm gonna soak up the sun, gonna tell everyone to lighten up. Gonna tell them that I got no one to blame, 'cause every time I feel lame, I'm looking up. I'm gonna soak up the sun. I've got a crummy job, it don't pay near enough to buy the things it take to win me some of your love. Every time I turn around, I'm looking up, you're looking down. Maybe something's wrong with you that makes you act the way you do. I'm gonna soak up the sun. I got my radio on so I can look up. I'm gonna tell them that I got no one to blame. Every time I feel lame, I'm looking up. I'm gonna soak up the sun while it's still free. I'm gonna soak up the sun before it goes out on me. Don't have no master suite, but I'm still the king of me. You have a fancy ride, but baby, I'm the one that has the keys. Every time I turn around, I'm looking up, you're looking down. Maybe something's wrong with you that makes you act the way you do. Maybe I am crazy too. I'm gonna soak up the sun. I'm gonna tell everyone to lighten up. I'm gonna tell them that I got no one to blame. 'Cause every time I feel lame, I'm looking up. I wanna soak up the sun. I wanna soak up the sun. I'm gonna tell them that I will lighten up. I'm gonna tell them that I get no one to blame. 'Cause every time I feel lame, I'm looking up. I'm gonna soak up the sun. I got my 45 on, so I can rock on. Thank you.
Would you still remember me?